Good morning. This is John Boushka, and today I'm going to present an overview of a short film script and screenplay I've written that's called Do As Do Tell and Expulsion. Alternative title might be Thanksgiving Reset, and it covers the incidents around my expulsion from the College of William and Mary as a freshman in 1961 over Thanksgiving weekend. It is confined to that series of events, and it kind of then leaves you hanging as to what happened to me afterwards, although that can be mentioned in the closing credits. So that's what I looked like as a teenager. You can see a receding hairline there, a little bit of male pattern baldness, even when I was 17. Um, those are my parents. Um, and but and That's the Wren Building at the College of William and Mary, a photo from 2004. And just get into the summary. Um, and the log line would be when Bill was expelled from college over Thanksgiving 1961. Due to dorm rumors that he's gay, he must adjust quickly to maintain the support of his parents and return to school somewhere else. And the major characters are me, my parents, a roommate, and the dean and Ben, and a friend, a high school friend who I had an attachment to, and a friend I made on campus, and a couple of other boys in the dorm. And I'll show you the screenplay itself in final draft, and it starts actually at the top. And we're going to we're going to actually read it in successive videos. It's too long to read in just this video. It will take too long. You'll see that in Final Draft 11, you get a scene outline, and you click on any particular one. I have a color code for the part of the Harmon circle that particular scene is in, and you'll see that I've documented all the scenes. And then there's some script notes, which are very useful when I use a color code for the Harmon circle. But you'll see that I can do that. You'll also see that there's the title page, Do As Do Tell and Expulsion, although I could have called it a Thanksgiving Reset. And that's you'll see what it looks like in Adobe. It's a little easier to read from a PDF. The print's a little bit bigger. So that's what we're going to redo the readings from in successive videos. And also, I will show you, first of all, this is from the first book. It's this one, the Do As Do Tell series. It was first published in 1997. And then mainly chapter 1. And it's also covered. The entire story is covered in this Do As Do Shell on my YouTube playlist. But let me just go back here and then go over the highlights of the story first. The most important thematic area of the whole idea is that when young men live in confined spaces, that produces a forced intimacy, and that accounts for a lot of the anti-homosexual attitude of the McCarthy era, the homophobia during the McCarthyism, and also translated the debate on gays in the military in the 1990s. It became very important. It's a very important connection that motivated my writing the book. I'll also, the basic parts of the story, I'd say there are 3 parts. The setup is in the first 10 pages or so, is my life in the dorm and the building up of tension with my roommate. The middle section is when I get a note on the door on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. And William and Mary did not close for Thanksgiving. They just had Thanksgiving Day off in 1961. I meet to meet with the dean on Friday night, and then the dean calls my parents who were visiting friends in North Carolina. That created an interesting disruption there. which is almost like a film in itself. And then my parents were informed when they came back that I would be expelled, and then they had to make a choice about me, supporting me and their future responsibility for me, and then inform me, excuse me, and my would be outlined in the closing credits. Here's just a geographical map of here was the Wren building, and here was Brown Hall, the dorm. It's about 700 feet of walking. I had to walk that pace that Friday night, and that's the main geography. And then this is where my parents picked me up. And here was this Chancellor Hill, what used to be Rogers Hall, the science building, was where chemistry, a lot of classes were, and where I had a lot of classes. And so that's kind of the geography of what it looked like. And then if you go into the middle part of if you go and look at the screenplay in more detail, which we're going to read, and the 8 parts of the Harmon Circle, I actually color coded them on my final draft that I showed you. Gray is the status quo. Purple is what I want. Just a successful academic career, and to adjust and build friendships. And then the inciting incident, which when I get a note on the door on the evening of Black Friday and then have to visit the dean. And then all the development of the story is the dean calling the parents. And then it's kind of hard to say what the find is, but I guess it's when I meet with my parents and still think that I'm going to be okay. Still think I'm going to be okay. And because the dean had told me he wouldn't ask me to leave school, but he changed his mind and broke his promise, which is a very important part of the plot. The pivotal choice is whether my parents will even provide for me, but they do. And they take me home, and that's kind of the end of the story. And then the inciting incident is blue, the seek is green, the find is yellow. The pivotal surprise or problem is brown or orange, and then the pivotal choice is red. And then the closing, the new status quo, is pink. That's the way I've set it up. Now, other ideas for attracting it, and I'll also show you. This is on Tyler Mowry, Practical Screenwriting. I'll give you the links for that in the description. This is I wrote a framework for it using his formula, and he made some comments in the writer's room meeting, and you can see I have a detailed framework. So I won't go over here because we're going to read the screenplay anyway. But you can see the 8 parts of the Harmon Circle are here. And there are a couple of other ideas. One is that you could have an 80-minute feature and include the setup material, the Science Honor Society in high school, and the final encounter with my friend Michael. And then you could add my father's revisit to the dean in early 1962 and having a heart attack, and sort of give the story a climax by having me be more involved in music, and then but facing institutionalization at NIH. That's one idea for an 80-minute feature, if that would be a better idea to attract money than just a short. But on all the feedback I'm getting in the writer's room, Tyler Mowry, the Practical Screenwriting writer's room, and I'll give you the link for that too, is that a short is the way to try to sell this idea. So, and a longer feature would have me going through everything, the NIH inpatient thing, which is interesting in itself because there was a connect when I was still going to school at night at GW. I was living at home, and I learned about the Cuban Missile Crisis at GW, and nobody at NIH on the ward knew about it. That was kind of interesting. Um, then I took a full-time job for a year, still went to school at night, but lost my chemistry major. That's kind of interesting. And I settled down, got to be a better chess player. And the end of the climax of the story is simply I'm going to graduate school, I'm going to live in a dorm again. And it actually makes for a reasonable climax for the film, given what had happened already. That still makes for a reasonable climax. That was kind of a discussion in the writer's room if that was a strong enough climax. Um, but you could have a series, and what we've been proposing on the Pitch Fest with iUniverse and that they sponsored is a series that would be based on chapters 1, 2, and 4. It should say based on chapters 1. I didn't put 1 here. It should say 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's actually save that. And the log line would be that when Bill was removed from college in 1961 for labeling himself as gay, he must assimilate to the normie world and prove he can serve in the military to preserve his own worth. Doing so will involve him in a political battle over gays in the military and don't ask, don't tell in the 1990s, even resulting in a major consequences in his own workplace and complicating his duty to care for his mother. That's the log line for the entire proposed series. And chapter 2 supports that because that's where I went to graduate school. I became an assistant instructor, and I flunked some people who failed algebra when I was an assistant instructor. And that resulted in that resulted in I don't know what happened here, but some typos. That that resulted in that resulted in my being in a situation to send people to the draft at a time when we had student deferments. And that is certainly a little bit dubious morally, the position I put myself in. But then I got drafted at the start of 1968. I kind of volunteered for the draft and wound up in special training company because I was behind physically. And that's what, and then that's what kind of creates the moral paradigm that I have possibly sent other people to the draft when I had to deal with it myself. That's a very interesting. I also took the draft physical 3 times so that the reputation for being homosexual didn't make me look bad, for getting security clearances later on and so forth. That's how the world was then. But the Second Coming talks about the when I look at chapter 3, that's not in the original plans. It was 1, 2, and 4 because the theme was supposed to be unity over the supposed to be unity over the whole idea of over people gays in confined spaces and sexual orientation in same-sex spaces, which came back as an issue with gays in the military in the 90s. But if you include the chapter 3, you're able to talk about AIDS and for how I came out the second time, and then my life in New York and the relationship I had, and also my association with Paul Rosenfels and the 9th Street Center, which led to his which was important at the time, but it would be supplanted later by Judith Butler's idea of formativities. And Paul never, to him, men could be feminine and women could be masculine. They were still biological men and women. He didn't intend polarities to be a personal label, but you know what's happened recently in the debate. And so that's the other thing. But then the AIDS crisis and the whole idea whether the public health threat, whether that was bigger even than the gay community or the male gay community, particularly because of the blood donation issue and other speculation. And then the whole idea that COVID more recently was so different, such a different kind of pandemic that the gay men actually did very well in because they tend to live alone. And I don't know, maybe the PrEP actually helped protect some of them from COVID. It sounds like maybe it did. But then, and I returned to chapter 4, would be the story of my involvement with the don't ask, don't tell policy. I visited a submarine myself. I interacted with an uncle who supported me in the issue. And then, because I was working for an insurance company that sold life insurance to the military, I relocated to Minneapolis to avoid a possible conflict of interest. That's interesting. When I wrote the book in '97, and then the layoff after 9/11 in 2001, and then moving back in with my mother, I kind of reset my personal life twice. Once I came back at the end of '88 from Texas. I had moved to Texas because of I sort of wanted to get away from New York after the breakdown of a sort of relationship in 1979, which was an interesting idea because that sort of probably delayed my possible exposure to getting AIDS, and I never did get it. But you can show, you can show all of this, and I actually have a little bit of that in here on page 17 of the on my another fun framework drafts I have. So that's kind of the summary of what I have with the screenplays, or the screenplay for the short subject, which is what we're going to be reading soon in future videos. So I do thank you for listening to this, and I'll be moving on very soon with probably 3 other videos to read the entire screenplay short subject. And thank you, and have a good holiday.